Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome everybody to You Belong Here. This is our workshop on imposter syndrome and creating a culture of belonging. So hello. Hi, Precious.
What's up?
Hi. Thank you to everyone else here that's joining us. We're so glad that you're here with us today to talk about imposter syndrome. So, the first thing that I want to do is just tell you a little bit about Precious and myself. I'm going to start by talking about my teammate, Precious, who's over here in my Zoom. Precious Bugarin is a creative director, designer, and educator who uses design as a language for equity to connect nonprofits to supporters, students to design aspirations, and entrepreneurs to bigger audiences and diverse voices through creative events. I know Precious because she's also a professor at PSU, Portland State University, where I've popped into a class or two over the years and have admired her work in the nonprofit space and her mentorship of students. But I really got to know Precious because of one of her events. Precious puts on an event called Let's Get Busy, and that was during Design Week several years ago. There was a couple of them. And during that time, her and I were able to connect around the meaning of what we do and the good, meaty stuff around working in the creative industry and what it means to do that work and then also carve space for ourselves inside of that industry where we're doing work with our values intact. Mm-hmm. We've always had the best conversations, so I was super thrilled that we could do this workshop together. So thank you, Precious.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And I'll introduce Jen. So at school, at PSU, I had heard so many good things about her. But I had never met her. So in 2013, she came to speak to our students, and I finally had the opportunity to learn more, which is really awesome. Her love of type, her energy, being a mom and business owner really attracted me to her. But as a busy creative teacher, mother, business owner, I had yet a new design crush that I couldn't cultivate at all, which was a bit disappointing. But as an event organizer, I've often used event making as a way to secretly force myself to connect with people that I adore. So around 2017, I created the Let's Busy event. That was a speed dating event connecting nonprofits to creatives. She came and we became friends. So over the years, we've connected over lots of things. Mom's experiences, being overwhelmed, although energized by our life. But I think what most tied us together was a shared value and love for people, the momentum of our work, the decisions that we've made about it. So I'm so glad she's invited me to stand with her and to talk and share and teach today. Jen is a designer, a creative director, an advocate for social change, and an all-around fantastic person. So thank you.
Thank you, Precious. I love that you did events so that you could get some of that in your life. And I feel like this event also is about getting, for me, like when talks come up, it's kind of like, I want to do the thing that I want to figure out, you know? Yep. So let's talk about our agenda for today.
All right. So let's jump in. These are the few of the things that we'll be talking about today. So we'll be talking about defining imposter syndrome. Why does it exist? What can we do about it? How to lessen imposter syndrome. We'll work through a few things by doing writing and or drawing exercises. And we'll also talk about encouraging a culture of belonging and learning. I did want to share this with everyone. The experiences we're sharing today, those are our own, and we're not experts. Though we hope that some of the things we've learned about ourselves can inform your professional journey. We hope that you'll join us in this conversation and in our vulnerability in sharing these things, and really open our hearts and minds to this really common thing that happens to, to all of us at some point in our careers.
Yep. And one of the things that Precious and I wanted to do is just have a conversation about what brought us to this. And yeah, like, why are we here and why do we want to talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that we're here because we're not alone in this. This isn't just a workshop with the two of us.
Yeah.
That's great too. But there's lots of people interested in this. So Precious, what about you? What's your
So I could share about this, and I'm gonna back up and just like acknowledge that we were talking right before we started about how we've been preparing for this conversation since March. And then last night, just the process of like going through the notes and being prepared, and then in some ways being over prepared, like being imposters, and just acknowledging the perfectionism and or like us pushing against that. We have such unique experiences working, me with teaching and working with the specific clients, and Jen as well. And we're really here to share that with all of you. So a little bit of background about me is that I'm a first generation Filipino American. I moved to Portland in 2002, and my family has really had to work exceptionally hard to be accepted and recognized. So I'm coming in with that experience. As a woman, I've inherited years of injustice. As a non-traditional academic, the system doesn't truly acknowledge me. And amongst other things, it brings me to this point. How can I acknowledge that imposter syndrome has embedded throughout the work that I've been doing? How can I work through that? What tools can I share? The conversations that Jen and I have been having like over these 8 months throughout COVID, which is another thing that's imposed on us both. How can we acknowledge that this is happening? And how can we also acknowledge that we're pushing through this process in a non-perfect way? And it's more about the progression, this positive progression of our creative, conceptual, and human development.
Yes. I'm so here for that. Yeah, and for me, one of the reasons why this appealed to me is that, to be perfectly honest, I've been experiencing feelings of imposter syndrome my entire life. I think there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And I just thought of one right before this where I was like, I think being an only child is a funny thing, because then you're like always looking like, what are kids supposed to be doing? Because I'm only used to being with adults, as a kid. But something I reflected on was that I was in a position many years ago, and it was a great position. It was an art director position, but I was there for years. And I had gotten lots of positive feedback over the years, and really always felt like I should have known more. I always felt like I could have been doing better. And the other piece of it was that I was always comparing myself with people that had way more experience than me in my field. And so I was just regularly feeling inadequate. And there's a lot of things, like, I really like the way that you framed it, Precious, as human being, just our evolution as human beings, because, just understanding this, you have to name it,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get underneath it. What are these feelings of anxiety and of not enoughness that everybody else is feeling too? And so this is our opportunity to kind of dig underneath that. So we're super excited to do that. Let me move. So who is this workshop for anyway? One of the reasons we want to bring this to y'all today is because this is crazy common. And the graphic says, people who get imposter syndrome is a green Other people who get imposter syndrome is another orange piece of the pie. And the rest of the piece of the pie is literally everyone else because they also get imposter syndrome. So maybe we're all kind of in this together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit more. What is imposter syndrome?
So what is it? So imposter syndrome is a feeling that you're not good enough, undeserving of your success, or that people will discover that you're a big fraud. Perhaps you feel you have to fake it until you make it. Maybe you feel unworthy of the position you're in, or you're afraid to move forward into a new one. So everyone really feels this differently. And in me, it manifests itself as a constant anxiety that I'm not doing enough and I always have to prove my value. And I think that really comes from discrimination and trauma, how I was raised, and the model minority myth. And so everyone comes at this in a different way with a different experience, and we'll share ways to address like what imposter syndrome is and how you can fight it on your own and with others.
So what causes imposter syndrome? I think the big thing that I want to say about this just general list of things is that the main point that I have is that the imposter syndrome isn't just you. It isn't that there's something wrong with you. These feelings are a natural reaction to some other factors. And so toxic work culture is one of them. And I'll talk to that a little bit after about what some of those characteristics are. White supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And that's just the interlocking systems of dominance that ensure hierarchy and is a dynamic that bakes in the idea of supremacy. So that means that there's always people that are better or know more or get more, and other people that kind of get less. That's the system that we're in, right? Socialization to be compliant, always competent, or have it all figured out. Many people, that's kind of our, I think of our school system as very compliance based, and that like, just sit down and do what you're told. Dominant culture has normalized overwork, perfectionism, transaction-based relationship. We live within the common kind of American concept of rugged individualism or bootstrap theory. And that's the idea that if something's going wrong, that there's something wrong with you and that you should have had it figured out. And it's your fault if you're not, on a certain trajectory. Another factor that I want to be sure to touch on is trauma. And just that if there have been times where you were not able to experience belonging or emotional attunement, that oftentimes those feelings kind of stay locked in our body and kind of live with us. And just really simple one, being inexperienced or you're in your field or in your career. If you're a newcomer and you're doing something new for the first time, it's very, very understandable that you would feel those feelings of imposter syndrome. Another thing I want to make sure to say is that we all know that women and Black and Indigenous and people of color and LGBTQIA folks are more likely to face imposter syndrome. Because when you're within a culture that regularly is kind of telling you that you're not enough or that you're other, you're going to start to internalize that. Mm-hmm. And so, and I also want to note that we live in a culture that's regularly ableist and ageist, and the creative industry can be very exclusive feeling. It has kind of like that cool, it's like the cool kids club. Well, if all the cool kids are the same and you're different, then that's attention. So if imposter syndrome is this internalized belief that something is wrong with you, it also may be because there's these societal and cultural factors that are pressing against you. And so it's just good once you can see it, it's a lot easier to kind of be like, move through it. Mm-hmm. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because we want a work culture that supports mentorship, growth, in a whole person. It's important because we want to close the wage and leadership gap for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, for women, for LGBTQIA, and for all marginalized people. We want everybody to feel at ease in their workplaces, and we want everybody to grow and learn and thrive. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I want to say about this is just that when we feel more belonging, we're in a better position to take risks. We're more willing to work towards what we want, and ideally more able to create the world that we want to live in which, you know, in everyone might have that different ideal, but for me, it's where people can have their needs met and have, you know, agency over their lives and their creative work and their career. Mm-hmm. So what does imposter syndrome feel like? It feels like you have to overwork or over-prepare. It feels like hypervigilance. It feels like you're dwelling on mistakes, like the fact that you didn't capitalize hypervigilance. I'm just kidding. You have a fear of messing up, a worry about negative feedback, overall feeling that you don't belong or know enough to be successful, a suspicion that everybody else is doing better than you, fitting in and feeling confident that you're not. So if anyone's felt that, you can feel free to chat in the chat too. Mm-hmm. But sure. we have a fun thing to do. So everybody needs to grab a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in this short exercise, I invite you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil. And I'd like you to share on the piece of paper, just go ahead and write a moment a moment, a time, an experience where you felt like an imposter. All right, so wherever you're at, I want you to stop. I want you to pick up that piece of paper and let's go ahead and send it away. I want to invite all of this positive energy through this talk, and I want to let go of that negativity. All right, so we're gonna kick that out. Woo, let's shake it off, right? We're gonna shake it off. And let's continue to share. I hope that felt a little good on this afternoon.
That felt really good, except for my piece of paper landed behind a piece of furniture. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
You gotta remember to get it out.
So what happens when we have imposter syndrome?
All right. So what happens? So the result is that when we're undermined by others, we internalize criticism and undermine ourselves. We choose easier tasks that we believe are more suited to our skills. We apply for lower level jobs than our confident peers. We don't speak at conferences. We don't step up as role models, mentors, and teachers because we feel we have nothing to give others. We are less at ease with our work and our workspaces or trying new things and putting ourselves out there. There's a quote from Stacey Abrams' book, and she was a former Georgia House Democratic leader. It's called Lead from the Outside. And in that book, she mentions this. When we doubt ourselves into an action, that paralysis becomes a habit. Rejecting opportunity is on autopilot, as familiar as our good but never great self-narratives. So we tend to stand still and watch others achieve what we could have. A colleague gets a promotion, a rival pitches the book you always meant to, a friend achieves her dreams, while you stew in a cauldron of safety, disbelief, and hesitation. For me, my narrative is fighting to be seen or living with a model minority myth. There's another fantastic book that I'm reading right now. It's called My Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong, highly recommended. But she says this, and I think this really encapsulates how I feel, especially right now. But while I may look impassive, I am frantically paddling my feet underwater, always overcompensating to hide my devouring feeling of inadequacy. And that just shook me. How can we as a culture unlearn this? How can we have, and through my experience now, I feel that I do have more of a handling or control over the type of work that I get and the feelings I have around the work. But imposter syndrome is indeed like something that I feel all the time. So how do we fight it? So there's a couple, or not a couple, there's a handful of ways that we mention as some of our tips. But as I'm reading these out and talking about them, I'd like you, and I invite you in the chat, to go ahead and jot some of the things that you do that help you fight imposter syndrome. So these are the things that Jen and I talked about throughout our preparation. And the one thing is really talking to others. So in some ways, like, our preparation was also really cathartic, I think, for myself and for you, because we're able to talk through this. Ask people you trust for feedback. Build alliances. And as an educator, I can't encourage people more to mentor and or become a mentee, because that's a way that you can have conversations around, is it building confidence or experience? And mentorship is about both parties learning from one another. So it's about that trusting feedback and building alliances. Ask lots of questions, right? Teach others about your field. I mean, in some ways, like, I think about my family, even to this day, like, not truly understanding what I do or make. Like, oh, it's just branding. It's, you make a logo, but it's not just that. So here's a few things we talked about with ourselves. So also asking questions of yourself. Is it motivations behind work, or is it self-talk? Watch the things that you say to yourself about the decisions you make and the body of work that you create. Learning to acknowledge your accomplishments. That's super important. Letting go of perfection. This is one that really hits me in the gut, especially as a teacher, because I feel that students are really afraid to just start something because of the fear of imperfection. And this last thing, reorienting ourselves around values and work. So for sure, right? So consider, in this like really short exercise, I'd love it in the chat if you were to like just jot a few things, a few ideas that you have. How do you fight imposter syndrome? And we'll select a few to share. There's a great quote that Jen gathered from Tuesday's talk, The Manifestations of White Supremacy in Design. And this quote is from Danielle McCoy. And it really resonated with both of us. It's, don't attach your value to your labor or to what brands are applying to you. Don't relate your value to the way your value is perceived in the workplace, right? And, I was thinking about this. I wrote notes about that we are more than our work, right? Our work is really close to us. It's really personal, but the work, but we are more than our work. It's what I do and what I make. But join me in saying this. I am more than my work. Right?
I am more than my work.
I'm more than my work, right? I have more to offer. So here, I'm going to jump in and just bear with me as we have all of our multiple screens and our keynote. So let's see, anyone else? Oh, can go. And I'm a little bit slow. Oh, so maybe there's nothing right now. So I'll check. Oh yeah, fear of messing up. Oh, there's a lot to go through. How to reject it, treat yourself. Okay, I'll check back, Jen. I'm afraid it's already
Okay.
2:40. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time.
Okay, great. I'll keep going.
All right.
So let's write a mission statement. Precious, why don't you tell us a little bit about what this is all about?
A mission statement can acknowledge your skills and values, and it can help us make decisions around work. So in this exercise, we'll provide you with tools to create a personal mission statement. And we're a bit limited on time, so we'll go through this quickly, but it could take 10 minutes. It could take a decade to write this. So just think about the exercise and think about maybe revisiting it to create one on your own. So this is the first step, and this is just an example. So my mission statement is I use design as a language for equity. And I'm just going to tell you a super quick story. So around 2017, I was really stressed out and my work didn't have a focus. And at that time, I had probably been designing and teaching for about 20 years. So I felt really overwhelmed and scattered. So I started seeing a career coach, and the career coach had me list all of the work, large, small. We didn't really even talk about money or budget. And we talked about all the work that I enjoyed the most. And this is what she came back to me with. She said that, oh, all the work that you've really enjoyed that has sustained you is you use design as a language for equity. And that, well, I said, that's it. Like, I want to use that as a way to explain to people what I do, because I've always had a really hard time. We're all multi-hyphenate, business owner, mother, entrepreneur, creative director, teacher. There's all these different things that we do. But so this statement helped me communicate to everyone, this is what I do. This is the type of work I do. This is my value. And this is what I believe. So the basic formula for this on the slide when it comes up. So first, it's what do you do? What are your skills? So we'll go through a short exercise. We'll just jot down some of those skills. The next thing is, how do you apply those skills? And that's really your work. And the last thing is, what do you believe? Just listing those values. And we'll string all of those really important things together to create the basis for your mission. So again, I invite you, the tablet, the piece of paper and pen. I'd like to give you about 2 minutes and keep this really, really loose. I'd love for you to write down your technical and interpersonal skills. And I will keep us on track.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. And I keep this wide open because sometimes the skills that you disregard are the ones that are the most important. Okay, and so let's jump into the next part. Did you want to take this part, Jen, or you want me to take it?
Yes. So the next activity portion in this formula is to list how or why your skills are used. So let me give you some examples on that. So for example, if you're an illustrator, how do you use your skill? For example, I use it to share. I use illustration to promote. I use illustration to explore or to explain. You know, kind of like it's like, how is it used and kind of what's the value of that skill? And the value can be something kind of non-tangible. Your work can do lots of things. It has lots of powers, you know? And so I think we want to like boost that up. We want to like recognize that there's some amazing things there. And then also one other thing I thought of is like, think of when you most love using your skills. Because I use design to do all kinds of things. And some of them are fine. No, and some of them are just to get something done. And then when I'm most excited is when I'm using it for blank. That for me and yours, Precious, like, because it's also meaningful, you know, it's like, because I use design to do some things where it's like, yeah, that's fine. But ooh, that part of it really excites me. Okay.
Totally.
So let's take 2 minutes to write some other things down
and do that portion of the exercise. Okay, we can wrap that part up.
Okay.
Cool. All right. And then the third part. So what we'd like you to do is go ahead and list some of your values. And so we have this list here on the slide. This is a place to start.
Oh, this is good.
Is it coming together?
Yeah, this is going to be on my website in like, you know,
fantastic.
Like in a week.
Fantastic. Yeah, they're in the chat. There's something here that's really fantastic. It brings in play. When we play together, we let down our guard and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Vulnerability amplifies our creative expression and helps us internalize our success rather than being dismissive of our talents. I really love that. So thank you, Troy.
I love that too. That's really great. I hope we can get a transcript of the notes.
That would be fantastic. And vulnerability was that skill that I used to disregard just because I would be required to be so strong in the places that I would work. And I think that more and more people just trusted once I really started to let it rip, right? Just like really let them in and really let them know how I feel about the work that we're doing.
Yep.
And it's been a journey, but it's also made my creative life much richer.
Yep. Same.
Yeah. All right, so we have our values list. So now let's show you some examples. So how do we put this together? And remember, these are just tools that you can take. You can take it to your team. You could take it to your business. Maybe this is something that you work personally with. But we put these three things together. So here's an example for a teacher. I teach, that's the skill, to invest in positive futures for children. That's one. And here's another. And so the next one, I use illustration to communicate. That's how the skill is applied. Joy and peace. And there's the value. So what, and I know that we did this really quickly, and that's because we don't want to run out of time. We want to cover everything for you. So what we love, if you feel comfortable, feel free to share a few of your ideas or the missions that you quickly created in the chat. And at the end, we'd love to share out.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And remember too, it's like, this is a work in progress. Like, that's not, we want, it doesn't need to be the one, but it's just so cool to just get some of those ideas percolating.
Totally. And I was in a talk last week and somebody said, it's not about perfection. It's really about progress and process.
Yes. Yep. So while people are kind of writing out their final, again, we would love to have you drop that in the chat because we want to share some from the chat. One of the other big things that Precious and I wanted to bring to this conversation was not just about like for me, I saw a lot of things about imposter syndrome where it's all about the individual. It's like, here's how you can combat this problem that you have, because you have this problem that's you. And so one of the things that I'm thinking of a lot with this is it's just like, oh no, this is a societal problem. And so here's some tips that we have around creating a culture where other people belong. And maybe this is something that you can think about as you bring it into your workspaces or your own practice or your mentorship. So one is encourage people. Another one is discourage hostility and bickering, make an effort towards clear and kind communication. Eliminating hidden barriers to participation, be explicit about welcoming new people. Document how someone can participate in projects and events in your community or workplace and group. And I would say another big one to this, and make sure that it's welcome to everyone. And recognize that there may be barriers for some people and not others. Like, for example, like I am like part of my PTA, we have meals and childcare at lots of our meetings. That's like a really good workplace example. As a leader, show your own uncertainties and demonstrate your own learning process. Who has been in an experience in a workplace where you worked with somebody that act like they knew everything and had it all figured out, and then it made it really intimidating to be in that situation? I've been in that situation, and I actually reflected on the fact that I was in a position of as a senior person where I had a junior person under me say, like, you're so critical of everything, it makes me feel really uncertain bringing my stuff to you. I totally forgot about that, Precious. I never mentioned it in my, that's something from a long time ago that really stuck with me. Reward and encourage people in your team and department for mentoring newcomers, just that's a value in the workplace. And don't make it personal when someone's work isn't there yet. Just know that we're all in a process. I also read this quote I wanted to share that I felt speaks to this really well. And it's, do you change people first or do you change society? I believe this is a false dichotomy. You have to change both simultaneously. Never lose sight of either the internal world or the external world, the peace within and the peace based on justice outside. And that quote is from David Dellinger. He's a pacifist activist. And so to me, like when I'm thinking of that, it's kind of like this kind of situation, it's an inside job and an outside job. We are internalizing things that are elsewhere. And one of the things that for me, it's like connecting with my values. And that these are just a few of the things that we could do to create a more welcoming environment. Okay. So here's some tips to consider. And I'll just read through them really quick, and then we'll talk about what, everything is an opportunity to learn. Define success on your own terms. Root into your own story, that your story has value. Recognize everything is learning. Oh, that's funny. It's like just like the first one. Hey, you guys, everything's an opportunity to learn, and recognize everything is learning. Thank yourself for being in the arena. Embrace your uniqueness. Let go of perfectionism. Don't take things personally. Be kind to yourself, and you don't need to compare yourself to others.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like we have about 3 minutes.
We can go until just before 3:15. We have until 3:15.
Oh, we do have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I was thinking, oh no, we're not going to have time for
a
conversation. So what I wanted to ask you, Jen, about this list, because the list is super thoughtful. So which one of these points resonates with you the most?
The thing that I keep coming back to is the learning one. I think that's why I put it on there twice. No, it just, that everything is learning, that it's not about reaching a point in which we feel that we have it all figured out, because feelings come and feelings go. And so the thing that I ask myself is like, why am I here? And I'm just here to learn and grow. Like, I don't do perfect anymore. Like, I don't, like, not that I ever was perfect. I'm just saying I just can't with even thinking about existing with that. And so with that, the question becomes less about what other people's want for me or whether I'm liked in a situation, but like, what does life want for me? How do I serve the whole? How do I be in service to the bigger values that I hold, even when I'm really uncomfortable? And so sometimes, and this is kind of what has developed from us working on this. So sometimes for me, it's like, how do I maintain in personal integrity and feeling good and centered in myself, even if I'm feeling that not enough feeling? And from that place, it's just so much easier for me to find creative flow and to do the work that I'm here to do, like to really be able to see what's the important work. And I'm really trying to embrace not having it all figured out and having that be a perfectly good place to be in. So that makes me wonder, Precious, what's yours? What's your on your list?
So what I'm selecting really follows what you're saying. Because mine is about perfectionism, but it's through the teaching space, right? So I've been a design educator for over 20 years across the West Coast, as full-time, part-time, art school, community college, state college. And what I've learned over time is that students are concerned more and more about perfecting their work early, and this is early on, right? And so my goal and my job as a teacher is to encourage them to really utilize the safety of education to grow and experiment and to make mistakes and explore. But because of the speed of our digital culture, they have barriers to do those things. But one thing I want to acknowledge is that the level of creativity and experimentation is quite high, but early in their educational career, they're more hesitant to just begin. And so that is something I just want to kick in the ass, right? And I'm from the old, I learned in the 90s, we probably talked about this before too, where everything had to be perfect. If we were cut and pasting it or using Quark or, looking at film so closely, that the way that we had to set up our files, we were really like in tune with not just like how the work aesthetically looked, but also how it had to be perfected in terms of its craft to be executed. And now I see the opposite. It's like students are afraid to just make the mistake to learn how to use the thing. And it's just something I want to dismantle completely.
Yes. Yep, totally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not much joy when you're like, oh, this is going to be
weird.
perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Yay, I love these tips.
Yay.
Okay, sweet. So we want to hear from you. We can't just unmute people and zoom you in, but we want to share some of what we're seeing in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited.
All right. And
I have one in case. So I wrote mine, and it's in progress, but here's one of them. I use collaboration. No, I use collaboration as a tool in communication. Well, no. Let's say I use collaboration as a tool in design to express value in meeting. Okay, that's mine. What do other people have?
Right.
I just wanted to do that in case you were waiting.
Yeah. And and feel free, if you have questions, you can go ahead and add those to the chat as well. And I'm a little bit slow. Oh, here's one. I sew costumes to create joy for myself and others.
Oh, cool.
I listen. Oh, here's more. They're all coming in now. I listen with empathy to make space for people to show fully as themselves and be visible. It's fantastic.
That's beautiful.
There's more. Yeah, and if there's any questions too, and I'm
Are there more to read?
not yet. Oop. Oh, here's another one. I'm a jackass of all creative trades in order to solve visual problems for those I truly connect with as people. I love that too. Mm-hmm.
That's such a good inner anchor too, where it's just like, is this a job that I want? And then you can kind of apply that mission statement, and it's like, I don't want to connect with that. So maybe that's not a good,
Totally. Here's another. I draw as a way to share my story to give people a sense of solidarity. Fantastic.
I love that.
Oh, this is great. Oh, it's making me laugh because it's so true. The irony is that we're all likely experiencing imposter right now, mustering up the courage to share imperfectly. For sure, right?
Yes. Bring it in. I mean, there's so much. I do a lot of work with groups now where it's like there's so much just in sharing. There's so much that gets released just by saying the thing. I've said things even before where I realized that something came out of my mouth that wasn't quite right. But if I hadn't said it out loud, I wouldn't be able to amend it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where it's like, oh, I believe this. And then it's just like, do I believe that? That sounds kind of messed up, or that wasn't the nicest thing to say, or whatever that is. It's just get it out. Get it out. Yeah.
Totally. Here's more. I use design to educate and inspire positive thoughts and actions.
Cool.
I create events to bring people together for causes that bring the community together.
Mm,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
These are all awesome. One thing I kind of want to do too after this, Precious, is do this a few times. And maybe
Mhm.
with that, I'll like rewrite my bio. You know what I mean? Because if I haven't done anything with that for so long, but I feel like there's actually a lot of avenues that, you know, that this can speak to.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
the formula. It's so great.
Yes. Oh, I love this. I draw pictures all day so other people can have as much fun as I have. Yes. You know, I always tell my students that I feel very privileged, and I believe that the creative community is very privileged. Like we were talking about this when your daughter found your Pantone book.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, you get to use colors all day.
You do this for work. Your job is so cool.
Yeah.
She'd never even known that there was so many colors. She was confused. Like, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much joy in what we do. Sometimes it's hard to remember that, you know,
Yeah.
because of speed, because of money. There's so many barriers that hold us back.
And that's where the thing that is like with this workshop, it's like survival. You know, it's like if we're worried about it, those some of these feelings just tie so into kind of the trauma responses of like fight or flight.
Mhm.
Where we either feel like we have to prove ourselves, which is like fight, or we're like frozen because it's just survival. Like we just have all this survival energy or survival material that we're working with.
Mhm.
But it's like if we can kind of work with it or understand that that's just survival stuff, and that's all real. It's not just, I mean, it is challenging to be in a job where you don't know if you're performing. Oh, and then another thing I wanted to say too is like, you know, if you're in a position where your job isn't giving you feedback, and that's part of why you're not sure how you're doing, because I've been in this situation, it's great to just ask, hey, I just want to find out if I'm doing, how I'm doing, how I'm stacking up, and what you'd like to see more. You know, I think that be asking questions is perfectly valid. Are more
Oh,
cool things coming in though? I don't want to talk if
oh
there's.
yeah, yeah. No. Joy is buried by the Yeah, joy is buried by the current reality. So anytime we can uncover it is precious for
Mhm,
sure.
mhm.
Um
Yep.
Teaching in this time is so challenging, but it also has kept me really grounded and hopeful. The capacity for more that the students bring, you know, I and we talk about this, like we're both moms, like seeing our kids like committed and working. It's it just makes me hopeful, sad as well, but teaching definitely grounds me for sure.
Mhm.
All right. And yeah, and are there any questions? I'm gonna for either of us.
Yeah, we've got like 2 minutes for questions.
All right.
Well, we're
And
so glad that you're all here with us, and just want to say thank you for everybody. I don't know who, you know, I can't see faces because that's not the setup, but anyway, I just thank you to everybody that showed up and took some time with us to explore and excavate.
mhm. Yeah, I echo that. And here's another that came in. I interpret, collaborate, and communicate to make assemblages for living. Mhm.
Ooh.
Yeah. Um, and as we wrap up, Jen, did you want to talk about your resources at all, or?
Yep, I just have a slide, and then you know, we'd like to get you this slideshow too. So I'll talk to Martha about how to do that.
Okay.
But basically just a link to anyone that signed up. And so these are just some both ebooks or some articles that we read that we kind of read in our research. You know, one is like dealing with imposter syndrome when you're treated as an imposter. I mean, yeah, you're going to feel like an imposter if you're treated like one. And so just little different things in case you want to dive deeper. And that's really it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.